He learned about Moki the day the new boy arrived. May was utterly the wrong time of year for new boys, of course. There were only a few weeks left before the long vac, which meant there was probably something very wrong with this one. Some reason he'd been shifted to Durnford so late in the term. An infraction so unspeakable, he'd been booted out on his 9-year-old arse from the last obscure refuge that had agreed to raise him. The new boy was bony and slight, a pale-faced number with springy tufts of brown hair all over his knobby skull. He had a sharp chin and wide cheekbones, and this combined with the tuftiness of his head suggested a young hawk, fresh from its shell. The boy's eyes were hawkish as well, winkingly bright, the colour of cold pond water. They studied Ian, as he stood ramrod straight and miserable, before the head's closed study door. "Hiya, kid." Crikey, Ian thought. A Yank. "Are you up for a beating too?" The boy slouched over, hands shoved in his pockets. "What does he use, cane or slipper?" "Depends. On how bad you are?" Ian nodded warily. He had no time for Yanks who appeared without explanation in late May. His heart was racing, as it always did when he faced Tom Pellet's door, awaiting his turn, the methodical swack of a plimsoll on a padded bottom, filtering thickly to his ears. TP usually slippered his boys, but he'd been very angry this morning when Ian's Latin grammar was pulled foul and dripping from the privy. Ian hadn't tossed it there, but he knew that if he had told who had, his head would be stuffed in the privy next. He was afraid TP would cane him. Canings drew blood. His face would crumple, and he would disgrace himself. The Yank thrust his shoulders against the wall. "I try to get a beating the first day at every school. It helps me size up the enemy, figure out what he's made of." "TP's a good sort, really," Ian said. "He doesn't beat us for fun. It's for the greater good of England." The Yank snorted. "I don't give a darn about that. How often does he do it?" "Well," Ian shifted uncomfortably, 3 or 4 times a week. But then, I'm very bad. How many schools have you been to?" The Yank jingled a few coins in his pocket. "One at home, when I was little, then 2 in Switzerland. I had to leave both of those. And then in Vienna, gosh, I lost count." "Vienna? You mean Austria?" He grinned. "Good old Habsburg Empire." "You've moved rather a lot," Ian observed curiously. "My dad's with the embassy." "My father's at the front," Ian said. "He's a major of Hussars." "What's Hussars?" Ian scowled. "A cavalry officer. Don't you know anything?" "Not about England." The Yank stuck out his hand. "I'm Hudson, by the way. What's your name?" "Fleming." Although mostly he was called Flem, with a particularly disgusting gob of spittle attached, when most people said it. He shook Hudson's hand and hoped his own was not too damp. "Wait a sec." Hudson stared at him. "You're not the grind. The fancy pants everybody's in love with." "That's my brother Peter. Only he's been sent home. Tonsils. He's 11. The Yank whistled through his front teeth. "I don't know how you stand it. I just got here, and all I've heard is Fleming says, and Fleming thinks. If I had a brother like yours, I'd slug him, or change my name." Ian bit his lip. His name was Moki's name, and he wouldn't change it for worlds. "Peter's not so very grand, really. Mamma says he's delicate. He has to have flannels on his chest and drink nasty tonics. He shall probably be taken, Mamma says, because he's too good to live." "Grinds always are." "I shall live forever," Ian said gloomily. The plimsoll sounds had died away in TP's office. He fancied he heard sniffling, a wet admission of inferiority. It would be his turn next. He closed his eyes and saw a length of rattan hissing through the tobacco fog of TP's rooms. Nobody would dare to stuff Peter's Latin in the privy. Peter would never be caned in his life. "My mother was too good to live," Hudson said suddenly. "There was a baby, too, but it didn't live either." "I expect it was a girl, then," Ian offered. "Dad didn't say. He just packed us up and made tracks for England." Ian listened for TP's footsteps across the worn wooden floor. The brass knob would turn with a metallic screech, and there would be TP's face, purple with the outrage of Ian's grammar.